Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Justice Forums. I am Daren, Jaime, and of course, we thank you for joining us. Now, if you ask the question, what is this show all about? Well, we bring you a forum discussing and providing a deeper understanding on the issues as well as the inequities that so many people face, things such as systemic inequalities to pressing social problems. Our guests provide multiple perspectives, as well as they give us their insight, helping us to better understand as well as address these challenges. So guess what? We invite you to stay connected with us. The Social Justice Forum starts now. And we are back. In the Black community, the pursuit and maintenance of generational wealth has encountered numerous challenges. Now, according to a report, Black workers face a median income that is approximately 30% less than their white counterparts. Joining me now is the CEO of Diverse Solutions and Credit Specialist, Ali Toure. And we thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And when we talk about these numbers, obviously, we know that a lot of that is attributed to, bad credit, right? A lot of that is attributed also to a lack of access. And I know that what you do is really kind of like bridging the gap in that area to bring people both awareness and then also the access to get things right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so share a little bit about that.
I mean, I've been doing credit for about a little over 4 years. It's something I do full time. It's something I'm extremely passionate about, especially knowing that our people never really had the education, the proper education, to know much about credit. So this is something I do passionately, and I do it full time, and it's something I really care about because our people need the information.
Right.
And we know how important credit is. It's everything in America.
Well, now let me come back here because you said that we know how important credit is. I don't think sometimes everybody understands the importance of credit. So give somebody the breakdown of the importance of credit.
I mean, if you're going to apply for an apartment here, everybody's going to check your credit. If you're going to go for a home, they're going to check your credit. If you're trying to get a vehicle loan, they're going to check your credit. Anything you're really trying to do, they're going to check your credibility to see how risky you are. There's a lot of individuals that, are very risky, and then you have others that's not as risky. But for lenders to know that they can give you access to this credit or give you access to the building or a home, they have to check your credit to see if you're credible.
Right.
Yeah, it's all about risk factors.
And so when we find credit reports that are out there, talk about some common things that we see amongst people's credit these days.
The type of negative accounts I see on a daily basis, you have individuals that have bad credit card debt, charge-offs, so many late payments. You have people that have bankruptcies, repossessions. All of those things are things that can stop you from getting to where you need to be. Anytime a lender check your report and see that you have a charge-off or a bankruptcy, you consider a very high risk and nobody wants to lend to you. So those are some things that most people usually have. Evictions, all types of things that I see on a daily basis.
And we understand that bankruptcies stay on your credit report for what, 7 years?
11 years, 11 years, yeah.
7,
they stay on
years.
it for a long time, very long time. Mm-hmm.
And they can pretty much have a lingering effect.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of the worst things you can have on your credit report. Mm-hmm. One of the worst things you can have on your credit report. It's not something that everybody do need. Sometimes people will go and try to, they'll go and say, hey, let me file a bankruptcy when they don't really need it. All they probably need to do is probably get a loan to see if they can take that loan off and pay off those balances that they do have and try to pay that loan off, little by little by little. Or they just, there's other ways around it, but people don't always need bankruptcies. Sometimes people take that way, but it's not always needed.
So as we look at credit right now and really the credit landscape, we know that there's a lot of things that's actually changed down through the years, right?
Yeah,
and
a lot.
so even very recently. So share with us a little bit about what's been happening that maybe we need to be paying attention to.
In regards to credit?
Yeah.
A lot of, in regards to the rates or what exactly?
Yeah, with regards to rates and stuff. I mean, we're seeing right now that, rates fluctuate, right? And we also understand that, people end up paying more with these fluctuating rates.
Yeah, I mean, right now is definitely a time, especially nowadays with social media. I'm sure a lot of people are aware. A lot of people are they're showing the importance of credit. It's extremely important. The best thing right now to do, especially now because rates are very high, I tell people right now, it's the time to focus on building your credit, making sure that your credit, you're maintaining it, you're paying them on time, you setting a lot of things on auto pay. That's a big thing. I always feel like I've noticed a lot of people don't really set their things on auto pay because they tend to think that, you know, if they do, they might wake up one morning and all the money they had in their account just came off. You know, I tell people, set these things on auto pay. Let them at least take out the minimum payment due. Because since you're going to pay it anyways, why not put them on auto pay? You understand?
Right.
So these are things that people want to focus on. They even, you know, work on bringing down your balances of your credit cards. Utilization makes up about 30% of your credit score. So those are some things you want to bring down to help you maximize on your credit score and increase your credit so that, you know, when you're trying to go for anything, you can get the best rate as possible, especially going for a loan because the rates are high and they determine the rates of the loan is going based off your credit score and your credit report. So those are little things that you can do to maximize on your score so that you're able to get better rates on things you're trying to apply for and to save as much money as possible.
Yeah, last thing we talked about before we switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk to me about credit due date,
Uh-huh.
statement date,
Uh-huh.
right? Payment date.
Yeah.
Payment date, right? And then there's a statement date.
Yeah.
And I've heard the advice, it's better to pay it by the closing statement date
Yeah.
than it is by the due date.
That's absolutely true. It's always we know that, you know, we have a due date every single month.
Right.
It's a due date every month that we got paid, but we don't realize that due date, usually 3 or 4 days before that, you have the statement date, and 3 or 4 days that you have the closing, you have the statement, you have the closing date, which you want to make sure you pay your cards by, make sure you pay everything by the closing date. Mm-hmm. Then a few days later is the statement date. You understand?
Right.
So they'll report it to the bureaus and say, hey, this is the balance that this individual have. So you want to make sure that your things are paid off before the closing date.
Right.
Make sure your balance is, you can call your lenders, credit, you know, whichever one you have, Bank of America, Capital One, Discover, call them and ask them, hey, when is my reporting date, when is my statement date? And usually 3 or 4 days before that is the closing date.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We hear a lot in Black and brown communities right now about this push to create generational wealth. Right?
Yeah.
And obviously, for so many families, that's a desire. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it seems like a mountain. Right?
Yeah.
So from your perspective, talk to me a little bit about generational wealth, because I know that's also part of your passion, what you really want to see people create.
I absolutely want to see people create generational wealth. It's extremely important, and it's all about information, you know. That's how I feel. I feel like it's all about information. Now that we have the proper information, it's time to implement and do what we got to do. Because now we can literally separate the wealth gap. Everything is there. Everything is there. And it all starts with credit. Because with credit, it's called equal lending opportunity. We all on the same page. There's no black, there's no white, there's no Hispanic, there's none of that. It's all numbers. What you have is what you have. You understand? So it all starts with credit. And the reason why I like it is because you have the opportunity to do a lot of things. You can go to the bank. Just say you have a business for quite some time. You know, you're making some income. You can go to the bank and leverage the money from the bank. So now you can use that money to invest that money into your business, which can put you in a better situation instead of using money out your own pocket. You understand? Which is what a lot of people do to put themselves in better situations. But now that we have the information, we can go and do the same thing as well, which could, you know, put us in a much better situation.
So what are some of the tools that I need for generational wealth?
What are some of the tools you need? I would say financial literacy. Mm-hmm. I say that's the key. Financial literacy is a foundation. Financial literacy is a key, and I stand on that.
Yeah.
Educate yourself on financial literacy, and then, you know, educate your family as well. You know, educate your kids, the ones that's coming behind you. Educate your peers, your spouse. You know, education is the key.
So when we talk about wealth, we talk about, you know, obviously credit is going to be the key to helping to build that wealth. Mm-hmm. I'll go back for a second and talk a little bit about if I'm in a situation because I need to get my repair fixed or my credit fixed.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like that's astronomical.
Mm-hmm.
I remember back in the day, years ago, when I first looked at my credit report, I just felt like it was overwhelming. I mean, now I have a totally different disposition, but I remember that first time it could be overwhelming for somebody. So what should they do if they find, hey, you know, I need some work here because I may have a late payment here, I may have this here. How do I get things back on track?
All right. The thing about credit is a lot of people tend to feel, oh, I can't, you know, I don't know if this can be fixed, if this is possible. Credit can always be fixed. Always, always. Because we got to understand there are a lot of errors and a lot of things that are on the credit report. The first thing you want to do is basically pull your report. You can go to annualreport.com, freeannualreport.com, get a credit report. It's free. You can get one every year. It's totally free. get that, you can look at the way that the creditors are reporting it. So a lot of times they're missing certain information, or they have the wrong dates, or they don't have the proper balance. They don't have the correct balance. Or the date that's been open is completely different. Or the day's last activity is open, or your late payments are completely different. So there's a lot of different factors, and by law, everything should be reported completely accurately, meaning 100% accurately across the board. So a lot of times when you do look at your credit report, you see those errors, you can challenge it. You can attack it. You can send letters to the bureaus. Hey, this information is not correct. Would you guys fix it? If not, could you please delete it? Most of the times, they're not fixing it. They're gonna end up deleting it, and that can help you and put you in a better situation. So, and I do provide the service as well, but I tell people they can fix it on their own as well. But just like taxes, people can do it on their own, but they won't do it on their own because they don't want to make a mistake.
Right.
You understand? It's the same thing with credit, but there are individuals that can do it on their own.
So for yourself who works in the industry, what challenges do you find these days?
Like with credit?
Yeah.
In terms of it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't necessarily deal with as many challenges. It's basically, the only thing I really did was me educating people, trying to change the mindset of individuals to know that you have to have good habits. Habits is key, it's everything.
Right.
These habits, whatever you do, it's gonna show. If you try to run off on this, so for me, it's trying to educate my people. Mm-hmm. Don't try to run off on Verizon, don't try to run off on Opto, don't try to run off on these guys and think that, you got away from them. Because they're not gonna come knocking on your door and say, hey, you owe us $500, you owe us $200. They're not gonna do that. What they're gonna do, they're gonna put it on your report, and now when you try to go do anything in the future, that's gonna pop up and that's gonna block you. You understand? So my challenge is really trying to educate my people and letting them know, like, hey, these are habits that you had in the past, but now you want to change up them habits. Mm-hmm. Have good habits, because these things are gonna follow you. It's gonna make you.
When you have these conversations, right, I want to ask a question about receptivity, because we're out here trying to, you're out here trying to let people know the way to go. But how open are people these days, particularly in this generation, to receiving information and then at the same time implementing it?
I mean, people, it all depends. You have some people that's not, you have those that are receptive to receiving the information. You have those that think they know it all. I mean, then you have those that do get the information implemented, mm-hmm. which are the best people, you understand? But for me, the most important thing is to let people know, give them the information. What they decide to do with it is completely on them. But you do have individuals that take the information, implement it, do what they have to do. And now it's important because now they can teach the others in their household. They can teach their brothers, their sisters, pass on that same information. Right. Information is key, and we need it. So it's all about passing on the information. What they decide to do with it is totally on them,
right. You made a path yourself because you decided to be an entrepreneur,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And how has entrepreneurship changed your view as how you look at employment, all of that?
I mean, it's definitely not an easy route. As you guys know, it's growing rapidly. Entrepreneurship is growing rapidly, and it's definitely not an easy route.
COVID did something.
Yeah, COVID.
COVID did something.
COVID definitely did something because COVID done changed the ball game. People working from home. People's like, hey, I can't just depend on the job. Let me form my own business and things. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody, and that's the honest truth. Because people see the good things, they see this, but they don't see what's going on in the background. You understand? So it's definitely not an easy route. It's a very challenging route. You work your own hours. You're not dependent on anybody else. You gotta, everything you do is on you. Mm. Everything is on you. The whole business relies on you. So you're not dependent on, just working a regular job. So anything can happen. It's definitely not an easy route, but is it worth it? Absolutely. Right. But it's not easy. It's not for everyone.
Talk about getting the house in order, if you will. We only got a little bit of time left, but I want to talk about getting that house in order. But here we are. We're getting ready. March is right around the corner. Yeah. April is tax season. What are things that people should really be focused on right now, so that way they can get into a positive first and second quarter?
Right now, people should definitely focus on saving money. If you don't have credit, build it, establish it. If you have, because a lot of people right now, I've noticed in a lot of people, their debt is very high, especially on their credit cards. Times are very hard. So if you do have high utilization, focus on bringing them down. try to take out a loan to pay off that, whichever debt you have, and try to maintain it little by little, but make sure everything is on auto pay. I always emphasize auto pay is extremely important. And one late payment literally drops your score from 50 to 100 points. And that could be on your report for 2 years. No, it could be on your report for 7 years, but it doesn't affect you as much after 2 years. But you got to understand, within that 2-year time frame, people got things that they got to do.
Right.
And when lenders see that late payment, what you think happens? They get worried. They say, whoa, oh my God, he's going through financial problems or something's starting to happen. So I always emphasize, focus on maintaining that credit, do what you have to do, and just, try to save as much money as possible. Try to save as much money as possible, because times are hard, and it's only going to get tougher.
Yeah.
It's only going to get tougher.
If people want to get in touch with you, how they go about doing that?
If you want to get in touch with me, my Instagram is The Only Prince Ali, THE, Only Prince Ali. And my website is diverseSolutionServices.com. Yeah, you guys can get in touch with me there. I can answer any questions you guys have. And yeah, I'm here for the people. I'm here for our people. It's our time now.
Yeah. Well, great talking to you. Great having you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
All right, we're taking a quick break. Have more here on the Social Justice Forums right after this.
Only 57% of New York City high school students are college ready by their senior year. .55% of high school graduates either have no plans to attend college or are uncertain that they will ever attend. .34% of young adults don't go to college because they can't afford it. Discover what's possible. BronxNet's education programs, internships, and opportunities help engage and inspire Bronx youth and beyond to pursue their passions. Be a part of the BronxNet family. Whether you're interested in our shows, joining a class, or donating to support our mission, visit BronxNet.org to learn more.
And we are back. February marks Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, serving as a reminder of a vital initiative dedicated to enlightening teenagers, their peers, parents, educators of the community on the prevalence and the ramifications of dating violence among adolescents. Dating teen violence, well, I should say, encompasses various forms of abuse. It includes physical violence, emotional, verbal mistreatment, sexual assault, and even controlling behavior. Joining me now, we've got the Children's Village Director of Family Initiatives at the Inwood House, Ed Reyes, and Assistant Director of the Comprehensive Adolescent Pregnancy Division, or I should say Prevention Program, Yehudis, and we thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, when we talk about teen dating and teen dating violence, let's get into how big is it, I should say. Let's start there.
So teen dating violence is more prevalent than people are actually aware of. So what we know is that in New York, 1 out of 3 teens under 18 will experience some form of teen dating violence. Now, that doesn't mean always sexual or physical violence, although we do know that 19% of teenagers across the United States experience that kind of violence. We also include emotional and psychological violence as well. And what we know is that 50% of teens experience a form of psychological abuse before the age of 18.
That's a lot.
That
And
is.
that's a lot for a young person to really have to go through. Given the fact of that, what kind of help is available when you have a situation like that out there?
Well, we can talk about our agency first. So at Children's Village, we utilize a multifaceted approach to this particular problem. We have various programs set up in place that can actually tackle these things, both on a high school level and also on a family level as well. So some of these programs, of course, are Teen Choice, which Yehudis is currently the assistant director of, where they go into the high school setting. They work in and out of different classroom settings, giving all types of information regarding teen dating violence, healthy relationships, and everything in the entire spectrum of how to recognize a healthy relationship versus an unhealthy one, and when can you see when it starts to turn abusive.
Yeah. Sometimes people are, when it comes to our teens, they can be very silent, when it comes to really disclosing information. What are you finding amongst young people right now when it comes to dating and this whole situation? Are they more vocal about what they're going through, from from relationship news to even the violence?
So what we do know is that the more awareness that we bring, the more likely students are going to come up and talk about it. So whether that's coming from home or at school, bringing that awareness into the classroom allows for students to then think about their relationship and go, oh, hey, I'm experiencing that. That's a sign of an unhealthy relationship. And then they're coming into our office, they're coming and approaching our facilitators after a lesson and saying, hey, I didn't know that about consent. Hey, I didn't know that that would be considered an unhealthy relationship sign. What could I do to help? The more awareness and the more we talk about it, the more I find that students are willing to talk about it and go for help when necessary.
Yeah. And so when a person experiences abuse, walk us through it. Say, for instance, God forbid, it's a loved one connected to me, and now I may not have that reach, but I know that you do because that's what y'all do. So walk me through. I come to your doors. I say, hey, I've got this. Where do we go from here?
So the first thing we immediately do is try to make that person feel comfortable in a particular setting where they know it's going to be 100% confidential when we're discussing certain things. Now, as mandated reporters, there are certain things that we do have to disclose to protect the life of an individual and perhaps someone else. But we're going to try to control the setting so that the person feels comfortable enough to want to share what's happening. Because Yehudis just mentioned before that there are many different levels and different stages to the abuse. We call it the relationship spectrum. So if everything's in the healthy side, then you're immediately going to enjoy the benefits of what it is to be in a communicative relationship, in a relationship where people feel like they're equal partners, in a relationship where they feel that my alone time, my personal time is mine, and when we're together, and they know how to differentiate the two. Then, of course, when you start going over into the unhealthy side, that's when you start to see what we call the warning signs, the red flags. We'll have that discussion with that individual, and usually they're the ones who are coming to us and immediately going straight to the red flags.
Right.
Things like my partner keeps asking me for my passwords on my social media accounts. My partner keeps blowing up my phone every 15 minutes and asking me, where am I, what am I doing, and who am I with? And those just 2 or 3 of the many different types of red flags that you'll encounter in a relationship. Then, of course, the part that we never want to hear, but unfortunately it's a reality, is when it starts to get abusive, when it becomes physical, when it becomes mentally and emotionally abusive, the gaslighting, the deflection, telling a person that they're worth less than what they actually are, so that they become dependent on that partner. And those are just some at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to relationship abuse.
Yeah, Yehudis, what are some of the warning signs that maybe we, the public, should be paying attention to in the lives of our young people that know that maybe they're going through something here?
Yeah, so some of the warning signs would be controlling behaviors, aggressive or short-tempered behaviors, making fun of you, whether that's in public or in private, demanding access to somebody's social media, demanding that they don't see friends and family, kind of isolating them and keeping them away from their peers, along with physical abuse and sexual abuse. But it's important to note that those warning signs usually aren't going to be the first time somebody physically abuses you, they're going to hit you. It's more likely that you're going to get in an argument and you're going to say, I would like to walk away, and they grab you back. That would be a warning sign that they're not respecting your boundary and they're grabbing you and they're not going to stop.
Right. You talk about the relationship spectrum, right? And for those people who may not be familiar with it, let's share with our viewers a little bit about the relationship spectrum.
So as I mentioned before, everything starts out on the healthy side. We call that the honeymoon phase. That's when everything's golden, everything's beautiful. You can't breathe without, being near each other.
That's called new relationship.
Exactly.
Right.
So everything looks great. And everybody's feeling good. Even everybody on the outside looking in is congratulating you, and they see the glow on your face, and everything's wonderful. Your partner can't do anything wrong, and likewise. Then, instead of nurturing that type of relationship, instead of feeding into it, instead of highlighting the good parts and reinforcing those good parts, sometimes people tend to start to drift off into the realm of, well, I'm in this relationship, so I'm owed a couple of things, so I can behave a certain way. I can get away with a few things. And that's on the low side, because behaviors like that can normally be corrected if two people actually have a communicative relationship, a relationship where they feel free to talk about uncomfortable topics. Sometimes it turns the other way around, where one partner just doesn't want to speak up for fear of upsetting or destabilizing that relationship because of whatever perceived dependency might be present. Then, of course, in that spectrum, you got the green light, as you would see as traffic light. It starts to go into the yellow, right? Look at what's happening, what's going on here. Now I'm seeing some controlling behavior. I'm starting to see making fun of me when I'm really not in the mood for it. A lot of the things that Yehudis already mentioned. The dangerous part is when it goes from that green to the red, and we call those red flags for a reason. Red means stop. This should not be happening in a relationship. The physical abuse, the emotional abuse, the mental abuse. A lot of people don't even mention religious abuse and even financial abuse. You can't practice your religion because this is the one I belong to, or maybe it's a Sunday. Sunday's for me. You might want to go to church. We'll stop going to church because I want you to hang out with me. So it starts to affect and bleed into all aspects of your family life, of your life with your friends, because now all of a sudden, because I'm controlling this relationship and I'm making you feel like you have to be with me, you're not allowed to hang out with your friends. And it's not so much them being allowed to hang out with their friends, it's more about not granting them access to their friends who may be trying to get them out of that bad relationships because they're the ones seeing the red signs before you do.
Right. That's a lot to consider.
Yes.
So when we have our young people right now, and that conversation comes about, really steering them from from green flag, yellow flag, red flag, having that conversation, say, you know what, honey, you're headed for a bad place. What's that conversation like? Are they receptive to hearing about their relationship? Because we do know something about teenagers. They think they know it all.
Yes. But I've actually found that they're receptive and they're interested to hear it. Oftentimes they're surprised and they're not aware that those might be those yellow flags. So giving some examples where it's not that your partner's yelling at you and telling you can't go see your family, it's you're coming back from seeing your family and they start saying things like, you left me alone all day, I was upset, I'm sad, now I'm upset, you need to do something to make me feel better. And then the next time you're not going to go see your family because you're going to remember what it caused. So when we bring up something like that and say, hey, that's not okay, oftentimes they are surprised. Along with that, when we talk about consent in the classroom, a lot of times the teenagers are surprised to even hear that a relationship doesn't equal consent. they think that they automatically are entitled to touch their partner, kiss their partner, demand certain things from their partner. And once it's brought up and we explain to them that that's not what consent is about, they take a moment and they sometimes think, and they oftentimes come to us and say, oh, hey, you know what, this is occurring. How do I either correct myself if they are the aggressor, or how can I help my partner, or what should I do because I might be the victim?
Right. Entitlement is really huge, I think. And I think that's a big challenge that a lot of teen relationships face is entitlement. What are you seeing behind closed doors? Are you seeing entitlement as being huge?
Well, definitely, especially on a social media level,
Right.
where they feel like you owe them the passwords to all your social media accounts. We're together. You don't have anything to hide. Why is it that you don't want to give me access? And it's never been about getting access to pretty much whatever it is that they're engaged in. It's being able to feel like I can control the situation and I can control the narrative of this relationship, especially if even I know, because most abusers are completely aware of the type of tactics that they're utilizing to demean their partners.
Right.
It's that controlling behavior is prevalent, and it's going to be very, very heavy. Now, unfortunately, in that particular realm, when it comes to entitlement, there's this sense of awareness where people feel like if I'm in a relationship, then there are certain things that happen in a relationship. My friends talk about it all the time at the lunchroom table. Even with adults, my friends talk about it all the time, you know, by the water machine. You know, there are certain things that you tolerate and there are certain things that you deal with in a relationship. That's just how it goes. But you don't have to go through that. That's one of the reasons why we're here, because no one should ever feel like they have to go with whatever society says in terms of things that you perceive or think you owe a partner. It has to be an equal, loving, and giving relationship, 50-50.
So if there's a young person out there watching right now and they hear a little bit about these flags, maybe you just actually really weld something up inside of them to say, hey, you know what, I need to really talk about this. I really need to get some help on this. What do they do?
So they could go to loveisrespect.org, and it's a website that will help them create a safety plan. I believe there is a quiz that they could take to test to see if their relationship is unhealthy or healthy or perhaps abusive. They should go talk to somebody in their school. Think who in their life is a trusted adult. And when they create that safety plan online, it will actually allow for them to think, who could they go to if they're in a situation they need to get out of immediately? Who could they turn to if it's not pressing, but they need to talk about it?
So for you as an agency, this work is definitely touching you to, continue to impact young people. Talk to me about that impact. What are you seeing by way of having this resource available, doing a lot of this, Teen Dating Awareness Month and carrying the message about? What's it like for you?
I've enjoyed every step of the way of my career when it comes to talking about healthy relationships. I come from a very loving home. I come from a home where, if something went down, it wasn't all about yelling or punishment. It was about sitting down, talking about what happened, what are my next steps, how is it that I'm going to resolve this situation and move that forward. It's a lesson that I pass down on my kids, and through connection, through every single student I've ever worked with. It's been a tremendous source of pride for me to be able to do that for not only Teen Choice, but also for Inwood House and the Children's Village, because we share an equal mission. It's all about making sure that our kids are safe and that our kids have a place to go to when they really need someone. And we do that in a variety of ways. We hold tabling events where we highlight certain themes throughout the entire year, and our biggest month happens to be February when we're talking about this very topic. Because when you're a teenager and you're growing up, it's all about identity.
Right.
I'm trying to discover who I am, and sometimes they get into relationships to actually figure that out for themselves. Mm-hmm. Now, in a healthy relationship, two people are learning together. But when one is being manipulative and one is using every tactic in their toolkit to kind of, control the narrative, then that person doesn't get an equal opportunity to actually discover who they are and how they can grow within that relationship, because now they're worried about living their life for someone else. And that's something that we make sure we put out into the atmosphere when we're working with kids, to let them know that you have a voice and you have power.
In your conversation and your interaction with some of the young people, talk to me about this part right here. they may find it to be acceptable behavior, but you know that this is a flag. How much ignorance goes on in teen relationships, and sometimes they just don't know?
There's a lot of ignorance, but there's also a lot of normalizing abusive and unhealthy behavior, especially online. People are posting pictures. Everybody seems happy and fine. So they might see in school two people yelling at each other, but then they see just the highlight reel on social media. And so they think, okay, this is normal. And we do know those who witness a form of teen dating violence are more likely to commit teen dating violence or become a victim of it because of that normalizing. So we break it down to them, we explain it to them, we make it as simple and say a healthy relationship is where two people have equal trust, communication, openness, equality. No one person has control over the other.
And if people need some assistance, what do they do?
Well, as Yehudis mentioned before, there are many organizations that you can reach out to. There's another organization that we also partner with. It's day1.org. They can definitely go there. They specialize in healthy relationships. Our agency put together the Teen Choice Program, which has been around for just over 50 years now. And we've been working inside of high schools, making sure we do it through group therapy, we do it through themed events, and we also do it in small group settings within our own Teen Choice offices, where kids have always had the freedom and the comfort to just come in, sit down. If you need to ball out, but we're gonna work through this, and the most important thing is that you're not alone. We're gonna be with you every step of the way.
How important is that safe space?
That is so important. It is so important also that not only certain kinds of teens think that they could come in and say, hey, I'm experiencing an unhealthy relationship, but all teens, no matter their gender, could experience teen dating violence. And I think that's very important to note. It doesn't matter somebody's gender, they could be a victim of teen dating violence, and it doesn't matter what kind of relationship they're in, they could experience teen dating violence.
Yeah, I know before, I think originally starting out, people just look at it through a heterosexual lens, and now we understand there's so many different components that you could be looking at it. So if you find yourself in the boat, just really get the help and have a conversation. Yeah, so thank you, Ed Yehudis. It's been great having you on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Appreciate that.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having
Yes,
us.
yes, yes. All right. Taking a quick break. Guess what? We got more here on the Social Justice Forum. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
We can't get anything done in this world that's so interdependent without communication. And certainly community-based media is really the core of that.
You guys do a great service to the city of New York, to the communities within that city, and really for the entire state of New York, telling the residents firsthand what's happening out there. It's very important that we keep your facility going for as long as possible.
We talk about the Bronx. We talk about it being a borough of opportunities, a global destination. We want to make sure that we create access and opportunity for future generations, creating local jobs, stimulating our economy, giving young people opportunities like internships that will not lead to jobs, but will lead to careers.
Hey everyone, it's your girl CAPP from the Kitty Rose Lifestyle, also from The Next Chapter, where we discuss shades of gray every week right here at BronxNet, Saturdays at 11 p.m. Wow, 30 years. 30 years of BronxNet public access television. I'm a girl from Brooklyn and came to the Bronx 25 years ago, started my journey on BronxNet on public access television in 2016, and BronxNet is where I got my start. BronxNet, I feel like, is a home away from home. They support all of my endeavors, and I wouldn't have been able to be on any of the other channels if it wasn't for the fundamentals that I learned right here at my start here at BronxNet. So I am so appreciative. My son says I should stop telling people I'm from Brooklyn because I've been here now, Bronx strong, for 22 years. So I'm so grateful, and I wish you much success in 30 years, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30 more, because public access is necessary so that people like myself can have a voice. Yes, BronxNet. It's your girl Kat from Kitty Rose. Check me out every Saturday at 11 p.m. right here, Channel 68, The Next Chapter, where we discuss shades of gray. Mwah.
And welcome back. The Black Man Can Incorporated is a not-for-profit organization dedicated to curating, creating, and amplifying authentic stories, events, and programs celebrating and exemplifying limitless capacities of Black men and boys. And we've got joining us now the founder, Chief Visionary Officer of the Black Man Can Incorporated, Dr. Brandon Frame, with us, and good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. Really honored to be here.
No, listen, it's an opportunity to have a conversation that we really need to have.
Yes.
Which is really about, empowerment, right? Mm-hmm. And really how we can talk about empowering Black men, empowering Black families. But when you came up with the Black Man Can, right, what was in your mind?
M.K. Asante is one of my favorite scholars, and he says once you make an observation, you have an obligation. So I made an observation that Black men and boys need to see positive images of themselves and need to have their stories told. So therefore, I had an obligation to create it. And that was in 2010 that it started as a blog, and then over these last 14 years, it's just evolved, as I've evolved as well, in terms of like when I first started, it was solely like youth focused, but I was 22, 23. That's what you're thinking about. You just graduated from college, you want to impact the community, but then it's grown to meet the social, emotional needs of Black men and boys, to talk about fatherhood, to talk about marriage, and so many other topics that are important to Black men and boys across the spectrum.
When we talk about that social emotional concept, right, I think there's so much that we could, that's a whole show all by itself,
Yes.
right? But when we really look at it, if you don't deal with it, you're not dealing with us. That's basically what I tell people all the time, because there's so much. So unpack for us a little bit, right? What do you find to be some of those great social emotional, issues that we really need to address to find ourselves being in a more successful place?
Yeah, well, I think first it's talking about what is social emotional learning and emotional intelligence. And social emotional learning is the acquisition of the skills that allow for you to be emotionally intelligent, so that then we can talk about what does it mean to have equity, what does it mean for us to think about the skills necessary for us to be productive, whole, healthy men, so that we can be the leaders in our community, in our households, and for society as large.
So I know that you do this, you've done this, and so podcasting and talking, right, and getting it through. What are the conversations that we need to be having?
I think there's multiple things that we can do. One is just talking about us in terms of just seeing positive images and narratives. We know that popular media might not necessarily paint us in the most positive light, so we need to be having conversations about how we champion positive images. We need to be having conversations about what does it mean to be emotionally intelligent. Many of us grew up in an era where it was boys don't cry, man up, and we have to kind of move away from that, right? Especially with the next generation, and thinking about how we actually become comprehensive men, right? Mm-hmm. And what does it mean when you talk about masculinity, and it's not just about being brave and providing and protecting, but also what does it mean to be vulnerable, compassionate, and have empathy, and so that you be a comprehensive man. Then we get into social issues. When we talk about mass incarceration, we're talking about police brutality. All these things are multiple topics that we have to discuss when it comes to Black men and boys.
So you got a few things going on, and I want to talk a little bit about it, because you got a lot going on. If you don't know, check him out. Really, he does. Talk about the Raising Kings campaign.
Raising Kings campaign. Black Man Can is a nonprofit organization, and as we know, you got to have some money to do the work.
Right.
And so the Raising Kings campaign is an opportunity for people to donate to the Black Man Can. Whatever dollar amount that will help support our programming, our Building a Better Brother Summit, the My First Tie experience, the Black Man Can Awards. All these things are different programming and that we do that gets support from people who donate to the organization.
Yeah, one of the things my first time. I really want to hear about that, because I'll tell you about that in a minute. But go tell me about My First Tie.
Yeah, so My First Tie, the backstory here for context is one of our programs is the Building a Better Brother Summit, but it's primarily focused on grades 6 through 12. And so I had a mom call me and said, "Hey, Brandon, my son has to come, but he's in the 4th grade." And I said, "Okay, that I'm gonna tell this mom, this Black mom, that her son can't come to the programming." And so he came. And he was an awesome young man, but after the end of the whole summit, he comes to me and says, how come you don't do this with my friends? And when I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm not in middle school and I'm not in high school, so why don't you do this type of work with my friends? And I was like, I didn't really have an answer. And so that prompted me to think about what would that look like. And so that became a children's book called My First Tie that I wrote and co-authored alongside Tanae Deneen Eskridge, where it's about little Dell and his journey to tie his tie for the first time. And then what we do is, that's what I do in elementary school. So I'll go and read to students. We'll talk about the different concepts in the book around honesty, around positive self-identity, and then they receive ties. So I read the book and they also receive ties. And we do it in multiple ways. We've done it where I'll go get the high school boys, right? We have affirmation cards at TheBlackManCan. So we'll do some stuff with the high school boys, but then with those boys, we'll go read to the young men and the elementary school. So there's multiple ways that we do this My First Tie experience, giving students an opportunity to learn how to tie a tie, see positive images, and also promote the importance of literacy.
Then we get down to 1,000 ties.
Yes. 1,000 ties is, we do it maybe twice a year, which is our mixer, happy hour event, if you will. And people come, but you don't pay to come, you bring ties. So you come and you donate the ties. Those are the same ties that are gifted to students from across the country when we're doing the Building a Better Brother Summit, or we are doing the My First Tie experience. And at that My First Tie, we do like some cool drinks, like we'll have the double Windsor Punch.
Really?
Right?
Okay.
You know, or there's the Mai Tai, so we call it the Tie Mai Tai.
Right.
Just to add that fun aspect to the event. But people come and have a good time, but really it's a good time with bringing ties to, that we donate to.
God called me, I want in on that.
All right.
I got 400 ties at home.
All right.
I can bring a few. So when you really look at the connection of young men into adulthood, obviously having the right resources, having the right kind of background and support really makes the difference. Talk to me about a little bit the area of that development, right? Because, you know, we don't have a lot sometimes in the area of investment by people on the outside. You're bridging the gap by way of investment. I know you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. You know, right, this could be a whole show.
Right?
On
Come back again.
itself,
We got
right?
you. I got you. We'll talk about producer ready.
But thinking about our boys and their development and what's needed, we really hyper focus on the social emotional development of the students, of our young men, and thinking about that and as well as positive self-identity. So and a lot of times when you go talk to young men, one of the things that you will hear is like, oh, I want to be a basketball player, or NFL, I want to be in entertainment, right? But one reason for that is that that's what you see. If that's mostly the images that you see, I was once that young boy. You couldn't tell me I wasn't going to the NBA, right? That was that. And what I learned over that is actually sometimes I'm not even upset necessarily anymore about that, right? Because if you want to put the effort in to try and be a professional athlete, I can take transferable skills from that effort. What I found in our work and what we really work on in the positive self-identity is that there are boys who don't aspire to be athletes or entertainers. They want to have their own TV show. They want to be photographers. They want to be creators. But when you ask them about that profession, they don't say it with the same confidence that boy who wants to go pro. But he says it with the confidence because he sees it. He's like, I know the pathway. I know what I want to do. When boys that you meet and they want to do other professions, they don't know Black men who do those things. So there's not as much confidence when I want to be a photographer, I want to be a video game designer. I've never seen that. And so in our programming, we're always thinking about how we develop the optimistic thinking, create the pathways, but develop that confidence by ensuring that they meet Black men who are doing the things that they aspire to do, because then in turn, they have that confidence when they say, I'm going to be this, you can't tell them nothing else. Just like when you talk to that young man who does want to be an athlete or an entertainer, but part of that is because that's what he sees.
Yeah, I think about one of our friends here on our show, Sharielle Smith. She's the editor-in-chief of Laptop Magazine, but she actually gets paid to like play games, watch them, do this, right? And I think there's something to be said. I've said this before. There's an old saying that my people perish for a lack of knowledge, but I also believe that people perish for a lack of exposure.
Absolutely.
And so when we talk about young men and that exposure, how about that exposure gap, for you what made the difference for you? Because you're a Morehouse man. Got to give a shout out to Morehouse, right? But you were exposed to high levels of education, opportunities, stuff like that. How much has that made a difference for you?
Exposure was huge, and one of the things that I did that we also teach our young men is using being a kid, being a teenager to your advantage. And one of the things that I did was the things that I was interested in. I actually would send emails. What you find about adults, most adults like to talk about themselves, right? And so if you reach out to them, let's just say a young man who was 15 sent you an email, said, I've been following you, I've seen the work that you do, I would love to come shadow you. Most likely, you're not gonna say no. It's just a matter of when they can come shadow you,
right?
But it's not gonna be a no. And so teaching young men to also use their voice and reach out to black men, and sometimes it might not be a person who's a black male too, because the first person I did was an anchor in Connecticut. When I was growing up, I wanted to be a sports broadcast journalist, and so I reached out to the local NBC 30 person, and then they said, oh yeah, absolutely, and then that's how I was like, oh, I really want to do this. Ultimately chose a different path, but was able to get a chance to see that, and so getting young men to create the exposure for themselves and using their voice, develop the confidence to almost develop the skill as well as to ask for help, ask for assistance. A lot of times as boys and men, we are grown up to not, right? You got to figure it out. And it's like, no, there's asking for help, asking for assistance, finding that mentor so that they can guide you. Because one thing we also talk about to the boys is when it comes to mentoring, if it took me 20 steps, it's supposed to take you 10. I'm not being an effective mentor unless it takes you half the time it took me to do the same things.
Right. But, oh God, gosh, that's another conversation all by itself. I mean, you just hit that. Because I think that there's a lot of us who don't want that, right? Because they want them to take the 20 steps. Unfortunately, there's two generations that say, I want you to do it the same way that I've done it, right? Have the same experience I had. And I think that's crazy. I do too. My joy is watching people get there faster.
Yeah.
Right? My joy is seeing you get it. I have a personal joy of saying, listen, if I'm invested into you and you get it, that does me great. But I don't think that everybody has that same kind of...
The intergenerational mantle passing.
Yes.
There's some work that we have to do there.
Right.
And I think also, too, I think there is... When we're talking about the idea of being a comprehensive man, one thing that we have to take time to really delve into as men, period, is our ego, right? Because what you just shared, that's a lot of ego right there. It's like, no, and it's like, hey, ego will keep communities from thriving, right? I was I watched a few movies. I watched the Rustin movie.
Yeah.
Did you watch Rustin? And then the other one right now, they have the MLKX Genius.
Yeah.
And you can watch, even as they're showing the movie, you can see this ego thing come up. You see Adam Clayton Powell and with Dr. King, right? There was so much ego just as men, and the March on Washington might have not happened if people couldn't get out of the ego.
Absolutely.
Right? So think about just things in life that wouldn't have happened, and there was so much ego involved to almost keep it from happening, or even keep things from being greater than what they could have been.
Yeah, I actually sat with John Lewis, and he told me at the March on Washington, there were 10 people who spoke, and he was number 8 out of 10. Dr. King was, 10, of course, 10 of 10. And I just was saying to myself, I could imagine thinking about all these guys. I should be number 5. I should be number 4, right? But the reality is, if a lot of stuff, but we're grateful that it actually did.
Absolutely.
It did happen. We live I say that we live right now in a culture right now that is based on individualism, right? Everything that we do is based on individualism, right? You got a job ahead of you now because now we have a job. Because I'm interviewing you, I'm saying you,
yeah.
right? You got a job because as culture has moved towards this place of individualism, gone is the family dynamic. How do we connect the dots?
All these topics are they're like their own shows.
Yeah, right.
Ways, right? Because I think one thing that we've moved to an individualistic society, but that's also very Eurocentric, right? And so what does it look like? I think about rites of passage programs that we should create for boys and girls, black boys and girls, and we really tap into being the collectivist culture that we actually come from. Because I think when you get into Eurocentric views, they tend to be individualistic, right? Even when you look at what Native American cultures were and African cultures were, individualism was brought to them. That's not how our cultures were. That's not how our communities thrived. And so I think there's an opportunity to have a conversation around what does it look like to bring back collectivist cultures and how do we actually work together to allow for our communities to thrive, because it's only in doing that that we'll see the liberation that we want in our communities.
Yeah. Okay, I push the envelope a little bit further, because I think, like, when you talk about individualism, I think about right now, young black men and the fact of the household and a fragmented household. You're trying to get people to stay connected, but yet and still society is pushing you to have your own voice, to do this, to do that. It's very hard to maintain a family dynamic in the middle of this individualistic society. And when you start to look at it, it seems like more and more the family dynamic is broken and in need of huge restoration.
Yeah, I think, so then that goes to storytelling, right? And that's one thing that we do at The Black Man Can. If you follow our Instagram page, when it comes to our events, our Valentine's Day campaign that we just ran is thinking about collectivist culture, about community, about how we work together to achieve the goals that we want in our households, but also for the community in which we live in. And I think the stories aren't necessarily always told of that. So the stories that we do see that are promoted are about people and being individual, but there are communities and there are people who are doing it in a community, in a collectivist way, but we don't necessarily tell those stories of success and how things are functioning in that way. And the more we tell those stories, the more we see. One of my favorite movies is Monsters, Inc., right? And so Monsters, Inc., I think it's an example of why The Black Man Can exist and why we do the work that we do. And Monsters, Inc., at the beginning, you find that the monsters are trying to scare the little kids, and then they get their screams, and that's how they power their community. And then the monsters realize it's not about that. It's actually about making them laugh. It's about making them happy. And the energy that comes from that is 10 times greater. What would it look like if we saw more of that when it comes to the media that we tell and the stories that we tell? Because we know what the world looks like, because sometimes people look on the news and just say, what is the world coming to? What would it look like when it's different, it's an inverse of what we see? And what would that do to communities and people in terms of what they think where they think the world is going and what is happening? It's not to say that crazy things and horrible things aren't happening, but part of that is the storytelling that we're doing around what is happening.
Right. So if people want to get connected to the work that you're doing, partner with it in some kind of way, how do they go about doing that?
You can come to www.TheBlackManCan.com. From there, you'll see more about our organization, our website, all the stories that we're telling. You can click the link to the foundation, so then you can get to the nonprofit side and see all the work that we're doing across the communities. You can follow us on Instagram. We've built up over 1 million followers, so that lets you know that people want to see positive images and narratives. So you can follow us there and along our journey to make sure we tell the positive stories, amplify, create, and curate programs and stories focusing on black men and boys.
What about the podcasting, man?
We're gonna launch the podcast in April. It's called The Men's Den. So we'll have to have you come on as a guest.
I love it.
We got the podcast. We got the Black Man Can Awards coming soon. We also have our flower affirmation wall event, which is celebrating the comprehensiveness of black men putting masculine affirmations, but done in flowers to celebrate that duality.
Wow.
So we have a lot of things coming, and so definitely want everybody to be tapped in because we're gonna do the good work.
That's it. Dr. Brandon Frame.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being with us, brother. You gotta come back.
Absolutely, I would love to.
All right, we're gonna make it work. All right. All right, listen, everybody. I want to let you know we come to the end of our show today. Hope you enjoyed this week's discussion on the Bronx social justice and anti-violence forums. Now, if you're rewatching this week's episode, yes, catch a recablecast right here on BronxNet.org. And if you want to join in on the conversation and present your point of view, well, visit our social media at BronxNet TV. Join us next week. We'll continue to elevate the discussion and bring further awareness across the globe. I'm your host, Daren Jaime, saying take care. God bless.